SuperTalk Mississippi mornings. Dave Hughes here, and joining us now, he is the state insurance commissioner. He is the state fire marshal. Talked to him many a times. Always enjoy it. The one and only Mike Cheney, commissioner. How you doing today?
Doing great, Richard. I'm down on the Gulf Coast for the leaf laying of remembrance of the victims from Katrina. So a lot has changed on the Gulf Coast since Katrina.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for just a minute, because you remember quite well what happened 20 years ago. There have been a lot of changes in a lot of different ways. As insurance commissioner, though, did Katrina bring about any changes to our approach to insurance? Because that was a massive insurance event in the state.
Well, Katrina brought side. We instituted building codes, which is something we should have done a long time ago, which means you build a stronger home. The second thing that we did was we enforced staying out of the floodplain, which is something we should have been doing anyway. So those are the two massive changes that happened. In addition to that, we started enforcing the flood elevations, and what you see today are homes that are built up along Highway 90, right facing the Gulf. And those homes are built to the new flood elevations that were established by FEMA in 2012. So we've seen a lot happen along those lines. The other thing that we've seen happen is that we stabilize the wind pool rates, and the wind pool is run by the state of Mississippi. It provides insurance to residents of the Gulf Coast as an insurer of last resort. And we've had rates basically level for the last 18 years, and that's about to stop. If we're going to keep rates low on the Gulf Coast, we've got to do something called mitigation. Mitigation is real simple. It just means that you put a stronger roof on a house, you tie it down to the walls and to the foundation so that after a hurricane, a consumer and policyholder and a citizen has a place to come back to. You don't ride a hurricane out in these homes. What you want is a home to come back to after a catastrophic event.
Do you think it's fair to say, with all of the changes you were talking about just then that were put into place after Katrina came through and we had to deal with the fallout from that storm passing by, do you think it's a fair statement to say that Katrina forced us to deal with some things we had just been kind of getting away with for a long time?
Well, Katrina forced us to look at enforcing building codes to stay out of harm's way. It just doesn't make sense to allow somebody to build at 5 feet above sea level. If you got a lot of money and you don't need insurance and you can get a building permit, that's your problem. But you got to remember that when you have a hurricane or any wind event, your home is subject to becoming a missile or almost destructive force for a home next door to you or a home behind you. So it makes sense for everybody along the Gulf Coast to have a stronger home. And by doing what we did with building codes, the new homes that were built are built stronger. They were able to survive a lot of things that had happened since Katrina. We've had Zeta that came through several years ago. Zeta could have been a $250 million storm. It ended up being only a $30 million event because we had homes with stronger roofs on them. So it's living proof that if you have strong homes, you build above the floodplain, you're probably going to survive a minor wind event or a catastrophic event. You won't survive a Cat 5, though, I would say that.
Well, Katrina was a very odd event because the storm surge alone was the biggest problem. You're talking about raising the homes and strengthening them and whatnot. That helps deal with that. But something like Katrina coming along again, I don't know if there's anything you could do, really, to prevent massive damage, is there?
Well, a lot of if you had another Katrina-type event, and you've got to remember the eye of Katrina was almost several hundred miles wide, whereas Camille, which happened in '69, and by the way, I was on the coast 2 days after Camille. I just back fresh from Vietnam, and Mary and I still had a home in New Orleans, and we had to look at it, and we came through the coast, and Camille had a very narrow eye, like 8 or 10 miles, so it was very concentrated, similar to what you might have with a tornado, whereas Katrina was very broad. It was like 90 to 100 miles wide, and that makes a lot of difference. You have a lot of storm surge when something like that happens. So we learned from Katrina that if you have a lot of storm surge, you got to build higher and stay out of the floodplain. That's pretty simple. And That's what we've done on the coast. We've enforced building codes. We have safer homes. And if you had another Cat 3 or Cat 4, you would have a lot less loss than what you would have had 20 years ago, simply because you have a stronger home and they're higher. It's real simple. You know, the American natives knew that you build out of a floodplain and you build a stronger home. We learned that in Sunday school. If you think about it, the wise man built his house on a rock, stayed out of the floodplain.
That's exactly right. But it's good that we learn from those, I'm not going to call them mistakes, even though that's the common phrase, but we learn the lessons that are taught to us by Mother Nature sometimes, because Mother Nature doesn't care what your opinion is.
That's correct, Richard. And the other thing that we learned lesson from Katrina is that you've got to build a stronger home. And the sad thing is Mississippi now is the only coastal state from Mexico and including an Atlantic state that does not have a mitigation program. The legislature just defunded in Mississippi, and you can roll over and play dead when that happens, and you don't want to fight with the legislature. But I've chosen to fight it. You've got to have mitigation on the coast, because what happens on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi for rates on insurance affects everybody in DeSoto County, Lee County, Alcorn, Tishomingo. It affects everybody. And you've got to, if you're going to have rates low, you've got to have at least some semblance of building a stronger home on the Gulf Coast, or mitigating those homes that were still here to a new standard where they can withstand a catastrophic event. That's the only way you're going to get rates down.
Let's talk for just a minute. You mentioned that you're down on the coast for the wreath laying event. Tell us a little bit about what's happening down on the coast today on the 20th anniversary.
Well, last night we had what they call a halo jump of the Air National Guard and military arranging 4 jumps by paratroopers. And this morning at 8:25, Governor Reeves and several dignitaries are at Jones Park, which is right next to the Port of Gulfport, to lay a wreath in remembrance of the victims of Katrina. So there are a lot of festivities, but they're very solemn festivities that people understand the losses of Katrina. And we're down here really to listen to the citizens and see what their concerns are. And this is not a political event. This is an event about trying to make the coast stronger and keep it strong.
Well, and that's the thing. When you hear that, you're there to listen to the concerns of the citizens, and you're thinking, well, this is the 20th anniversary. Can they have any concerns left? Well, yes, I think they can, can't they?
Oh, definitely they have a lot of concerns left. And the major concern from the consumer point of view is that why did we kill the mitigation program? And I try to explain that if you got 1,000 people that are on the list to have their homes mitigated, and by the way, this is not tax money we're using. The money we use for mitigation comes from the insurance companies. We're making them belly up. They made money, and to make certain that policyholder has a home they can come back to. So it's a complicated issue, but it's really simple. You just build a stronger home, stay out of the floodplain, and we're not using tax dollars to mitigate these homes. The public needs to understand that. It's insurance dollars.
And that is important, and that's another big change that can be made. So, and this discussion proves that even though it is the 20th anniversary, we're 20 years past Katrina coming in, we are still adapting to the lessons that storm taught us.
The basic thing, and I've heard Governor Barber say this, I've heard Governor Bryan say it, and Governor Reeves say, we've got to learn lessons from Katrina. A good example would be that in Alabama has mitigated over 55,000 homes in Mobile and Baldwin County. Their insurance rates are 20 to 40% less than what we have in Mississippi. If you live in Jackson County, you work in the shipyard or work for Ingalls or Chevron, you might choose to live in Mobile County, which is 15 miles across the way, because insurance rates are cheaper, or live way north of the railroad tracks and I-10. So we do know that if you build a stronger home, you can help the economy on the Gulf Coast and across the state of Mississippi. It's just a no-brainer. Lessons learned simply says, stay out of harm's way, build a stronger home, and build it higher.
Mike Chaney, Mississippi Insurance Commissioner and the State Fire Marshal, we appreciate your time. I know you get a lot of stuff to get to, more events today, but we do appreciate your time, and thank you so much for representing the state the way you do.
Thank you, Richard. Always a pleasure to talk with you guys, and it's an enjoyable thing when you make a difference in the life of a policyholder and people on the Gulf Coast to make their home stronger.
When we come back, we've got Melody Golding joining us. It's a cool story, somebody you may not have heard about, a Mississippian, a Vicksburgian. Is that a word? It is now. We'll talk to her next on SuperTalk Mississippi Mornings. Keep it here.